it's just not right. It doesn't make sense. The 911 call was 10 minutes before my son was shot. And this cop, the one that was in there cussing me out, sat across the street, literally in his cruiser. Because why? This is a black club. This is a holiday. We know they're going to get down there, get drunk and act a fool. So we're going to sit close enough to where we can get them. You know what I mean? But you don't even come across there when the 911 call say, hey, they fighting in the parking lot. If he would have drove that car through that parking lot, we might not be sitting here. You know what I mean? Because that would have stopped it right then and there. When my son was coming out that club, none of the bouncers stopped it. Nobody tried to help him. When he was shot, the state trooper, the one that was cussing me out inside the jail, instead of him administering CPR to my son, which is what he should have rendered all kind of help to him immediately when he seen him in that condition and not just counted him dead, removed a gun and secured a gun instead. Which, yeah, that might have been a part of what he had to do. But why didn't y'all immediately start administering some kind of help for my child so at least he could have died in dignity off on a stretcher inside of the van at the hospital 2 or 3 days later? I don't know. But I just know that was not okay. I know that my son could hear me screaming and being slammed on the ground in the midst of all that. I couldn't get to him. He couldn't get to me. You know, like the damage that they have done. And I know that I'm able to talk about it, but I've done it. I've said it so many times and so often and so many times in a day. And so I'm just desensitized. If there's a way to be that. But to make any sense out of all of this is just so unreal that I must have some kind of mental state that I'm disassociating to try to protect myself. Because if I really think about this, I would literally go crazy. Like I would literally go crazy. But I also know that I'm having to fight, you know, like I have to put this out there so people could hear what happened. And I think that it's crazy that I would have had to have died too, that I had to be shot in the face for somebody to hear this.
When someone departs this earthly realm before their time, we hold tight to their memory, cherishing it as dearly as the moments we once shared. Their essence remains woven into the fabric of our hearts, shining brightly against the backdrop of loss. Today's case takes us down south to Hendersonville, a town deep in North Carolina. But don't be fooled by the numbers. 83.5% may claim to be white, but that doesn't mean they're fair or just. Only a measly 6.73% are black, and another 6.46% are mixed race, leaving little room for diversity. It's no surprise that Hendersonville has a long way to go when it comes to racial equality and fair treatment under the law. They didn't even acknowledge Black History Month until almost 50 years after it was recognized by the US government. And let's not forget what the ACLU had to say about this place. They've been terrorizing and mistreating Black folks for far too long, just like the rest of America. You want proof? Just take a look at North Carolina's Racial Justice Act. It's clear that Hendersonville has been plagued by discrimination and injustice towards people of color for far too long, especially our Black brothers who are constantly denied their basic right to seek justice. The tragic death of Elijah Timmons, son of Patricia King, who we will come to know in this story, echoes that of Sonia Massey's case, with one crucial difference. Patricia survived, but her son did not. Elijah's final moments were filled with agony and betrayal. According to local media reports, a big party went down at the Orchard Bar and Grill in Hendersonville during the wee hours of the morning on Black Friday. How ironic. But as always, there's more to the story than what makes it in the press. We believe that the real truth lies with Elijah's mother, Patricia Ann King. Sure, the news says there was some shouting between two women and a fistfight between two men outside in the parking lot where around 40 cars were parked. But what they won't tell you is that when Elijah was shot in the head, Patricia's pleas for help were ignored. Her hands were bound by metal shackles as she was forcibly thrown to the pavement. The rough concrete tore at her skin, causing her pants to slip down and reveal her bare backside. As if that wasn't humiliating enough, the officers nearby couldn't contain their amusement, making lewd remarks about her curvaceous buttocks. to make matters even worse, they had the audacity to accuse her of assault and resisting arrest for just trying to be by her son's side. Can you believe it took authorities 8 long months to even bother testing the murder weapon, despite clear evidence and a witness? And even then, they left Patricia in the dark and refused to give her any updates. Instead, she had to fight for every bit of information while being met with silence and cover-ups. It's like they were adding salt to her wounds after losing her own flesh and blood in such a senseless way. Despite learning that her son was still alive when he was covered under a sheet, Patricia received no support and was basically told to just accept it. Can you imagine the pain and frustration she must have felt? But despite her pleas for justice and accountability, she was treated like a nuisance by the very people who were supposed to protect and serve. It's appalling to see the footage of her encounter with police, where multiple officers can be seen agreeing with her, but refusing to take responsibility for their actions. And instead of showing compassion, they responded with violence and aggression, leaving Patricia helpless as she watched her child die. How can trained law enforcement behave this way? It's dehumanizing and shows a lack of basic empathy. Even after charges against Patricia were dropped, she is still traumatized by the incident that occurred after her son was targeted and attacked by another group. Witnesses confirm that there was an accomplice waiting to retrieve the weapon used in the attack, making this tragedy even more heartbreaking. Welcome to No Tears for Black Girls. Elijah Edward Timmons III passed away suddenly on November 24, 2023, at the mere age of 30 in Hendersonville, North Carolina. Born on August 21, 1993, he lived life to the fullest until his final moments. He treasured time with his beloved mother, siblings, and relished fishing trips with his father, cousins, and sons. He also reveled in bonding with his stepfather over their shared love for cars and motorcycles. His nieces and nephews were his everything, and he was blessed to hold his namesake, Adore Life Elijah, before he departed. Elijah leaves behind his heartbroken mother, Patricia King, stepfather Gabe Hogan, father Elijah Edward Timmons Jr., brothers Jaytwan, Anthony, and Darius, sisters Ontaria, Tranis, Kuyonte, and Gailisha, grandparents Terry Whiteside, Perry King, and Mammy Wade. He also leaves behind 4 beloved sons, 1-year-old Yair Timmons, with long-term girlfriend Tishala P., 12-year-old Seer Zion, and 10-year-old Emilion, with former partner Brittany Williams, 6-year-old Kizarion, with ex-partner Shanika Collins. He was preceded in death by his brother Kuivante, great-grandparents Ruth and Frank Whiteside, great-grandmother Lily Ruth Hill, and grandfather Elijah Edward Timmons Sr. A celebration of life service was held on Saturday, December 9, 2023 in Asheville, North Carolina. However, it wasn't until Thanksgiving night, 2 weeks prior to Elijah's burial, that the tragic events leading up to his death were unveiled. After a heated altercation that ended with Elijah being shot in the head, his grief-stricken mother, Patricia King, was arrested at the scene. All she wanted to do was check on her son and see if he was still alive. But instead, she was met with brutality from the police. She was thrown to the ground, handcuffed, manhandled, and humiliated as her pants were forcibly removed in public while she was denied access to her dying son. According to Patricia, Elijah was still gasping for air when she was taken into custody. A video that she shared with No Tears for Black Girls shows witnesses desperately trying to save him while the same officer who attacked her stood by. This is just another tragic example of the injustices faced by Black women at the hands of law enforcement and society, even in their most vulnerable moments. Patricia King is a woman who takes pride in her relationships, especially with her 17 beautiful grandchildren. Her youngest child was Elijah Timmons. Patricia's first son tragically passed away in a car accident 7 years ago, leaving her devastated. She believes he was purposely run off the road, and the Hendersonville police never took action to solve the case. The loss of her son Elijah and the way she has been treated by HPD only adds salt to her wounds. Now Patricia is not only mourning the loss of her son, but also raising his young daughter and her twin sister's daughters, ages 8, 10, and 11. Despite this tragedy, Patricia has dedicated herself to helping others. She works as a community health worker and organizes support groups for mothers who have lost their children. This passion for aiding others has always been a part of Patricia's life. She worked as a CNA for 19 years before becoming a bus driver for a Black charter school. To keep busy, she continues to take classes and be involved in the community health field. Although she has been single for 3 years now, Patricia was previously married to the father of all 7 of her children for 6 years, before getting into a 24-year relationship with her ex-partner. Elijah, or Dude, as Patricia affectionately called him, due to his mature nature, was always full of energy. Despite his mischievous behavior, he was incredibly smart and had a great sense of humor. Even at a young age, he was independent and loved taking things apart just to put them back together again. However, after Patricia divorced her husband, Elijah began struggling in school and acting out. It seemed like he was searching for his absent father and feeling let down by his absence. The family moved between North Carolina and Atlanta frequently, with Elijah spending summers with his father until eventually living with him for full school years as he got older. As a teenager, he longed for freedom and spent time with friends, but Patricia was working 2 jobs and had to be strict. She didn't allow him to have visitors or go out, insisting that he stay home. He eventually fell in love with an older girl named Brittany, who lived with her mother. Despite Patricia's objections, their relationship continued, and Elijah became a father at a young age to 2 sons, Z and Mealy. Patricia became a proud grandmother, but her son also fathered a child with Shanika, a girl named Key. Years later, Patricia's son met a woman named Shay, who stood by him through thick and thin. She witnessed his struggles and triumphs, including the birth of their son, Year. As a father, Patricia's son showered love and tenderness upon all 3 of his children, especially Key. Despite facing injustices and serving time in jail, he worked tirelessly to provide for his family and turn his life around. But the system was against him from the start, as he constantly faced mistreatment from biased police officers and an unfair justice system. Despite never showing disrespect, he was repeatedly targeted and unjustly held in jail for petty reasons. Patricia was advised to be tough on her son, but she refused to do so because she saw his goodness. In jail, he endured countless hardships, while his complaints were ignored and bonds set at unattainable amounts. Despite these obstacles, he persisted by working multiple jobs to support his children and striving for a brighter future. Though not without flaws, he never gave up on turning his life around. Upon arriving at her mother's house, Patricia immediately recognized the familiar faces of her family members, all gathered together in lively conversation. She stayed for a few hours before deciding to head back to the city. Knowing that going to her mother's house would mean having to stay overnight due to limited sleeping arrangements, she resisted the temptation and didn't want to intrude on their time with her son's newborn niece, Adore Life Elijah. The first time she held her was earlier that evening before they left for Patricia's house. Upon safely returning home, her son called to check in and ask if she still planned on going out. Despite his drunken suggestion for her to retrieve his gun for protection, which was captured by her room ring camera and later shown at court days before Thanksgiving, Patricia got a call from her son, Elijah. He needed a ride home from work, and she happily obliged. As they drove, he revealed his desire to spend the holiday with his family instead of on the job. She was touched by his constant joking and laughter throughout the day as they chatted on the phone. On their way back to Patricia's house, Elijah mentioned needing to make a stop at his own place first to grab some clothes. They ended up making a circle from Candler to Hendersonville to Brevard, spending quality time with loved ones at each stop along the way. When they finally arrived back at Patricia's, Elijah took a shower while they bonded with his sister and her kids. The whole family then gathered in the dining area, enjoying drinks and catching up as Patricia finished whipping up delicious banana puddings for everyone. But as the night went on, Patricia couldn't help but notice how much Elijah seemed eager and obsessed with taking selfies with all the little ones. It was unusual behavior for him, but she brushed it off at first. However, when he refused to listen to a gospel song by Marvin Sapp and insisted on playing other music instead, she started to feel uneasy. Memories flooded back of how Jesus had always been there for her during tough times, and she couldn't shake off that feeling of discomfort. Suddenly, Elijah opened up about his brother, who had miraculously survived being shot thanks to wearing a Virgin Mary t-shirt and Jesus piece. More people arrived at the party, including Shay from Charlotte, and they continued to drink and socialize. Despite Patricia's protests of not wanting to look crazy, Elijah insisted on taking more selfies with her throughout the night. The last one was when she went to change, and Shay joined them before they all headed out to their cars. But right before they left, Patricia's daughter noticed that Elijah was missing. She remembered seeing him asleep on her bed earlier and quickly woke him up to join them in the car. As they drove to his grandmother's house, Patricia couldn't help but feel guilty for disturbing his sleep. But they ended up having an enjoyable rest of the evening together with family. However, as she rode out into the empty streets of downtown Asheville, where everyone else seemed to be celebrating Thanksgiving at a party in an orchard, Patricia couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling that lingered. It was like a dark cloud hanging over their perfect holiday gathering. Patricia rushed home, yearning for the comfort of her sanctuary. She shed her clothes and sunk into a steaming bath, hoping to wash away the stress of the day. Donning her satin pajamas, she snuggled into bed with her phone close by, ready to drift off into slumber. But sleep was fleeting as her daughter's frantic call pierced through the peaceful night. Patricia's heart raced as she learned that her son had been shot. Without hesitation, she threw on some socks and scrambled for her slides, dreading what she would find when she arrived at the scene. Her worst fears were confirmed as an officer blocked her from reaching her son's lifeless body. In a frenzy, she fought against the restraints and screamed for mercy, only to be tackled to the ground with brutal force. As chaos and screams filled the air, Patricia could only pray for salvation from this nightmare. With each passing second, her desperation grew as she realized her own child was suffering just a few feet away from her in this unjust attack by law enforcement. And then, darkness overtook her. Patricia's mind was racing, trying to comprehend the brutality that had just unfolded in front of her. Her body ached from being dragged across the pavement by the police. She could see her child laying nearby, his life hanging by a thread, but with each attempt to reach him, she was met with force and aggression. The officers showed no mercy as they shoved her into the back of their car, ignoring her cries and pleas for answers. As they drove her to the station, their threats and hostility only intensified, and when they finally arrived, Patricia's worst fears were realized as she was stripped of her dignity and treated with utter disrespect. It was clear that these officers saw her not as a vulnerable mother, desperate for her child, but as a criminal to be punished. Despite being confused and terrified, Patricia refused to remain silent about the injustice she witnessed. But even speaking out came at a cost, as one officer threatened her with violence, while another went so far as to spit in her water. In this moment of chaos and cruelty, Patricia couldn't help but wonder what would become of her and her children in this unjust situation. Patricia was baffled. It didn't make any sense. Why would her son's killer do something so cruel? Patricia sat stiffly in the interrogation room, listening as Detective Bonanno detailed her son's brutal murder. The air was thick with tension and sadness as she awaited the video footage that would reveal the truth. After expressing his condolences, the detective finally played the footage for Patricia, showing her a world of violence and betrayal. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her son being attacked by multiple assailants, all while a girl unknown to Patricia stood by. In a desperate attempt to understand the events leading up to her son's death, Patricia begged to take a picture of the mysterious girl for later investigation. But as they continued watching, it became clear that this was no random act of violence. Her beloved son had been targeted by Terrence Burton, calmly walking towards him with a gun in hand before taking his life. The cold-blooded killer made his escape in a flashy red car, leaving Patricia numb with grief and determination to seek justice for her son's senseless death. And as she shared her suspicions with Detective Bonanno, they both knew that Terrence had done this before. He was a seasoned murderer whose thirst for blood could not be quenched. Her son knew the killer, and when she asked witnesses about the incident, she got some of the answers she was looking for. The chaos erupted outside the club, but inside, eyewitnesses saw Terrence approach Elijah with a hug before unleashing his savage attack. Patricia was stunned and demanded answers. She interrogated witnesses, asking if he saw the assailant flee in a car and if he remembered the license plate number. They confirmed everything and provided crucial details to identify the perpetrator. With newfound clarity on the culprit, Patricia vowed to take action. She made 2 calls, one to the DA for a warrant and another to the detective for an update. Yet, days passed without any news or progress in apprehending the suspect. Fuming with rage, Patricia relentlessly contacted the detective, demanding to know why her son's killer was still roaming free. The flimsy excuse given was that they couldn't find him, leaving Patricia with a gnawing sense of dread for her family's safety. A few days later, while her daughter's car broke down in a parking lot, she came across the mother of Terrence Burton, the man who took Elijah's life. Without hesitation, Patricia raced to the scene and saw Terrence and his clan cowering in their cars. Though there was a police car nearby, it was conveniently off-duty. Drawing on all her strength to contain her frustration, Patricia tried to warn the officer about Terrence's wanted status, but was met with indifference. She then bombarded the detective with calls until her daughter finally got through. It turned out that Terrence was being questioned by the cops for intel on a shooting that happened weeks ago. But despite being identified as the shooter, 30-year-old Terrence had yet to be arrested. Confused and fed up, Patricia demanded an explanation as to why they hadn't just picked him up already. The detective revealed that they were also rounding up other suspects from Buncombe County based on phone records found at the crime scene. And a couple of weeks later, all those individuals were taken into custody for drug charges. But even with this significant development, there was still no news of Terrence's arrest or court dates. Determined to get answers, Patricia called the police department but was brushed off by Detective Bonanno, who insisted on a meeting on December 12th, the same day as Elijah's funeral. Despite voicing her concerns, she reluctantly agreed. Deep down, Patricia knew something wasn't right. It all seemed too fishy, yet eerily fitting at the same time. On December 12th, Patricia and her daughter made their way to the police department, just 2 days after laying Elijah to rest. As they arrived, they were separated and taken to different rooms to give statements. Patricia was led into a room called the training room, where she was greeted by Detective Alan Bonanno, District Attorney Andrew Murray, and Police Captain Patton. With Shay by her side, Patricia took a seat as Bonanno positioned himself at the corner of the table on her left, with the DA in the middle and Captain Patton to his left. As Detective Bonanno droned on about the investigation, Patricia's mind was consumed with thoughts of her son. The video evidence they presented only served to deepen her confusion and disbelief. She hadn't seen any muzzle flash or sparks of fire when she watched her son die in that crowd. How could so many people have missed something so crucial? Her frustration grew as she tried to make sense of their claims. Were they really accusing her son of having a gun? But Detective Bonanno delivered the final blow, admitting that their investigation had hit a dead end. Despite hours of work and multiple individuals reviewing the footage, there was no clear answer. It was almost too much for Patricia to bear, feeling like she was being blamed for something she knew nothing about. The detective responded calmly, explaining that he avoided mentioning specific details to spare Patricia any further distress. She scoffed, stating that she was not easily manipulated. He reassured her that he had conducted a thorough investigation, but the evidence pointed towards her son being the aggressor in the altercation. Patricia argued vehemently that her son had been attacked by a group and claimed that any actions he took were justified in self-defense. The detective mentioned something about a disagreement turning violent, but Patricia insisted that the video footage shown to her did not support this claim. She accused the police of bias and stated that her son was not involved in any gang activity. Despite her protests, the detective refused to press charges until someone from the parking lot came forward with new information. Shay became upset and announced she was leaving with her child, prompting Patricia to follow suit while the detective followed behind, apologizing for his actions along the way. Patricia listened intently as the details of her son Elijah's shooting were recounted. The prosecutor claimed to have presented video evidence to the defendant, but declined to press charges. Witnesses who saw the entire incident remained silent, either out of fear or indifference. Shay, who had witnessed it all, revealed to Patricia that Shakelia Campbell, a former girlfriend of her father Ernest Robbs, also known as Pee-wee, was now dating Keon Anderson and was present at the time of the shooting. Shay believed that Shakelia had played a part in providing the gun used to kill Elijah and confronted her about it. However, Shakelia denied any involvement and insisted that Keon had taken her gun without her knowledge. But Shay knew better. Shakelia was just trying to cover her tracks. Rumors on the streets suggested that Shakelia had sneaked the gun into the club in her purse, and somehow it had ended up in Terrence's hands, with which he shot Elijah. When Shay asked her father, Pee-wee, to inquire about the purse that allegedly held the gun used in the shooting, Shakelia eventually admitted she possessed it. According to her, Keon had cursed her out for having the purse. Patricia couldn't make sense of it all. She suggested that Shay record their conversation when she went to retrieve the purse, just in case Shakelia let something slip. Despite not fully believing that Shakelia was involved, Patricia wanted to leave no stone unturned in their investigation. Shay was visibly distressed and still struggling after what happened. As she arrived at Shakelia's house and stepped out of her car, Shakelia immediately began talking about how Keon had taken her gun that night. Unbeknownst to Shakelia, Shay turned on her phone's recording feature and quietly captured their incriminating conversation from behind. Shakelia ranted on about various events that had occurred, but made sure to tell Shay that 2 years prior, Elijah had become enraged at her for something and threatened her with a gun. She claimed that he was later killed in the same manner. Hearing this, Shay felt sick and turned to Pee-wee for clarification. He confirmed that Shakelia had told him the story, but stated that she had said Elijah pointed the gun at her instead. None of it made sense to Shay or Patricia. According to what they heard, Keon believed that Elijah had been intimate with Terrence Burton's children's mother, who was also involved in drugs, along with Shakelia and Keon. However, Patricia knew that her son had no interest in such relationships due to their drug use. Terrence's children's mother was hot for Elijah, but he refused her advances as she was strung out on drugs. She loved to party in her private after-hours spot with a stripper pole in the living room, where wild kickbacks took place every night and weekend after the club. Rumors flew about the scandalous things that went down there, including inappropriate acts in front of her own 12-year-old daughter. The poor child even had to sleep with a knife under her pillow for protection. It's sickening to think what may have happened to that young girl. In videos shown to us by Patricia, Keon's girlfriend Shakelia can be seen near the action during the fight between Terrence and Elijah. At one point, Keon had to physically push Shakelia away from the brawl, while Shay desperately tried to stop Terrence from attacking an intoxicated Elijah. According to Patricia, a local guy known as Fish was also present during the murder as a witness. We're not sure of Fish's level of involvement, but Patricia received a photo and tip identifying him as Marquise Resper. During the incident, Fish was right there taking selfies and recording everything that went down, later sharing it on Instagram Live and other social media platforms. This begs the question, were any of these witnesses questioned by police? And why haven't more people spoken out or sought justice for Elijah's tragic death? It seems only Patricia is fighting for justice in this case. After Shay revealed the truth about Shakelia's involvement in setting up Elijah and the shooting, Patricia felt a wave of nausea wash over her. The injustice and oppression that her family faced was suffocating her. She watched videos of Shakelia hovering over Elijah, pulling Shay away, and then cowering behind a wall when she realized what was about to happen. It was crystal clear that Shakelia had knowledge of the situation and chose to do nothing to prevent it. Patricia made a promise to herself. She would do everything in her power to seek justice for her son's senseless death. Our writer and producer, John Reedburg, jumped on a Zoom call with Patricia, where she fearlessly spoke out about the injustice inflicted upon her by the police and the mishandling of her son's case. A GoFundMe page has been set up under the name Justice for Elijah Edward Timmons III, for those who wish to support the family. You can find the link in the description of this episode. Without further ado, here is our powerful interview with Patricia.
How it went down. Basically, my son was in the club. He was drinking, and he was with his girlfriend, and he was with his friends, and they're having a good time. And I guess everybody started to leave. I don't see that part in this particular set. I mean, this like screen. But you just see him in there dancing and having a good time, and he's walking around and stuff. I got different frames from people taking Snapchat videos and stuff like that. So it's all just everything matches. So he you can see him walk like he's going towards the bar, which is passing Shakelia, Keon, and Terrence. So they're all sitting at this little corner, like the end of a row of bar tables and stools, like at the end of it. And then my son walks past them, and as he walks past them, I don't notice anybody say anything or do anything. They just really silent, just watching him and not know, there's no audio to this. The part that the police showed me. And so my son comes back, and as he's coming back, there's a clique of guys from this project called Hillcrest. And they're all just all in that whole little clique. It's probably 15, 20 people just in that little clique. And they're sitting in front of him, the three of them sitting in front of him. And so he walks past, and as he walks past, two of them was coming from the direction my son was headed. So you could tell that the one that was walking a little bit ahead was actually trying to bump into my son. But I guess he staggered a little bit, so he missed him. But when he missed him, the other one ran up, like he didn't run, but he kind of walked fast enough to where he could bump him with his chest. And so when you see him do that, my son is like looking around like, what in the world? And I know he knows he's inebriated, so he's just looking, and then you see him decide like, yeah, there's a lot of people in here, let me just leave. So he turns around and he walks off. And when he walks off, he walks through a corridor. When he gets through the corridor, he disappears, but there's other people leaving too. So he just disappears in the corridor. Well, you see Keon, which is the guy in the brown jean looking pants, through those videos. He is, he must have whistled or yelled or did something to get Terrence's attention, because you just see him snatch his head around really fast, and then take off running. So he takes off running, but he's running through the corridor in a crowd of people who don't know they don't know what's going on. My son doesn't know he's coming. But when you see there's no video in that area, the next video footage that you see is over the door of the club and then to the right of the door of the club. So it's kind of close together, but it's two cameras at the top of the door. And so when you see this part that he shows me, my son is snatching the jacket off, yanking it off. So he ran through there and hit him. He had to do something in order for him to snatch his jacket off, and he was mad. And so once he got him out there in the parking lot, and all of them started to surround him, they all just started taking turns, slapping him, punching him, pulling his hair. just my son he was a fighter, so he would fight you. And and he was defending himself. And so he was fighting back, but it was so many of them. And so Terrence, I don't see him disappear from the crowd, but he clearly disappeared from the crowd, because when the detectives showed me, when he stops the part where they run up the crowd and start beating on him. And the only reason why I know that they did is because I have footage from somebody's Snapchat recording it on the outside, exactly what he showed me. I got a video footage of the exact same thing he showed me, but on the other side of the parking lot, So um he cut it off so I wouldn't see them jumping on him, but I already knew what had happened. So he rolled it and scrolled it down a little bit, and he said, "There's your son. I know you can't really see him because it's dark." And he had on a thing like this on the top of his head. He had dreads, and so we always wear the matching colors, but he always wore black. So he goes, "I don't know, you don't see him, but he's standing right there." And he said, "I know it's him because he's the one that ends up dead." So he starts to play it. Terrence walks calmly and just with his hand down, right hand down, gun in his hand, no shirt, no hat, and nothing in his left hand. He just walks. He don't distract the crowd. He don't say anything to them. He just walks up behind them, get a close enough distance to my son, um, basically postured himself, raised his arm, shot him, and watched him fall. And then he made this weird circle, like he didn't turn around and walk back the way he came. He just made a circle and walked back the way he came. And I don't know why that always stood out to me. It was just weird. Um, with no emotion, no reaction, um, just like he was paid to do it. That's just how I felt like, and that's exactly what I say to the detective. I was like, "Oh my God!" I was like, "He looks like he was paid to do that," and I'm still watching it. And then he keeps walking, and then he got in the car, a red mid-sized car, and he got in the backside of the car. At the time, I couldn't tell where he got in. I just seen the door shut and the car pull off. But there's no way he got in a car and crunk a car or mashed a button, or he didn't do none of that. As soon as he shut the door, the car was pulling off. And so I said, that looks like somebody waited for him. And he was like, "Yeah, I seen that." I said, "Did you see how he did that?" I said, "He looked like he's done this before." And he goes, "Yeah, that's what we said too." And I said, "This is crazy. Like, why did he do that?" He said, "Well, I don't know either." He said, "But do you know, when I first started watching the beginning of the video," he said, "Do you know what the relationship is with the two of your son and this guy?" And I said, "No." And I said, I mean, he's 30. I don't know who his friends are." And he says, "Well, he walked up to him and dapped him up and hugged him, and then an hour later did this." And I said, "That just don't make sense to me, but I know how Hillcrest is, and they're known for ganging people and bullying and doing all that stuff. So the whole pure fact that he hugged him was to get my son to feel like everything is cool. We don't have no problem. We don't got no beef. Everything is cool. So he can get drunk and they can do what they did." That was all the more reason why I was explaining to him that this was premeditated. And so when I explained all that to him, he said, "Well, he said, I believe you." He asked me, did I know him? How did I know him? I told him I knew him by way of the internet, just out and about, out in the nightclub scenery. Sometimes you would see him and sometimes you wouldn't. I hadn't seen him hardly ever, but once or twice, but I knew who he was. And so he said, "Well, you've identified him. Your daughter's identified him." And so 2 phone calls. I'm going to make 2 phone calls. One going to be to the district attorney, get the warrant. And then the second phone call will be me calling you, telling you that he was arrested. So initially, I think that was the plan. Where it went crazy, I really honestly don't know. And just because he's going along with it, I feel like that behavior was intentional from maybe I really thought that maybe he was going to do the right thing, but I don't know if he just all from the jump was never going to do the right thing. But why show me that and then have me be able to prove that you showed it to me and then tell me I didn't see it and ignore me all the way through? There, ignoring me on every end. I've emailed, I've called. Today I actually called the attorney because I was told by the detective when my son's autopsy came out. Well, so I'm going too far because I want to say this. I petitioned the court to get court order to see the body dash cam because they had charged me with assault on a police officer and resisting arrest. So that whole deal was a lot, and it was unnecessary. But when I was released and I came to see the video, then I was just hopeful that they were going to do the right thing, and they just absolutely. I think what they're trying to do is be more abusive than they already have been, and to cause more trauma, expecting me to just fall out or throw my hands up. Nobody in my position has ever gone this far. Nobody in my position has ever took initiative or try to put up a fight with them. And so I just feel like it's just a horrible place to be, to fight a system that is designed automatically anyways to oppress, but then to be diligent in disrespecting me and continuing to cause all this stress and strain is just a whole nother animal.
Do you think racism plays as a factor in the way that they handle this case? It's because your son is black and there's two black men involved. They just not really showing any interest because of that, or what do you think the issue is?
I absolutely believe that this is the initial reason why. I feel like I think that when people are this devilish, that they fiend off of causing so much hurt and pain to people who they just don't like. And I always said to them, and I've always been straight up when I speak to them, that had that would have been a white guy, had I would have been a white lady, the things that happened to me that night would have never happened.
Okay. And in regards to and can you tell you about the gentleman who shot your son? Who was he, and why do you think and why do you think your son was set up among those people that was involved in the shooting?
Well, I honestly can't say why, because I've heard two scenarios that just does not make any sense. And so one being pretty much, they both are pretty much the same thing. Jealousy, they didn't like my son because all the women liked him. And the girl didn't like my son because I guess she's a drug user and she has this kickback, they call it a kickback party in her house every night of the week. Anytime there's a club, she's the after party. She's got a pole in the middle of her house, so they're all over there doing their drugs and partying and all their stuff. And my son wasn't attracted to that. And so I guess she pursued him a few times and he just was like, no. And so she just didn't like him. And so Keon has, I want to say two kids, but I want to say the youngest child, his mom and my son were really cool, really cool. And so I think he felt some type of way about my son and his kid's mom. They had a crazy relationship and had broke up, but he felt like my son was, talking to her, whether they were or not, I don't know. And then the one that actually killed him, Terrence, pretty much the same thing, that he thought that my son was talking to his kid's mother. But the types of relationships that they have are not typical relationships like what you or I might have. An older set of people, you date, you go with somebody, you have respect. It ain't none of that. It's we sleep with everybody, we do what we want to do, we come and go as we please, but you can't do what you want to do. And so Hillcrest is just known for violence, just craziness all the time. But they do and they will stick together. I mean, if you live over there, you're a part of the crew, and if you go somewhere and somebody has a problem with somebody, we can just all jump them. And they've done it for as long as I've been here. That's just what they do. From Shaquila's dad, who basically said that, yeah, he felt like the whole scenario was a plan originally that his daughter didn't have a hand in, but and she didn't believe it was going to happen. So that's why she didn't alert anybody. But once it did happen, she freaked all out. She was scared. But if you listen to some of the video and see some of the stuff she's written and some of the threats she's made to me, she's full on 100% involved, just like the shooter. She just is.
Can you tell me about some of the threats that she made towards you?
Well, so initially when all this happened, I know we kind of going backwards because I didn't really tell you like from the jump how this all even came about. Um, and so I hadn't seen Shaquila in maybe a month or two. Just in she worked at a restaurant. I would go in there and order food. I would sit at the bar. She was the bartender. I would sit at the bar until my food was ready. So we would talk, hey, how you doing type stuff, just laugh and giggle about, just common stuff, but no serious conversations. I really didn't know her. But she was friends with my daughter, a couple of my kids. So, that's how I knew her. And so the last time I had seen her, that was the attitude with her. And so I didn't even know that she was at the scene. I didn't know anything about what happened. I didn't know anything. I just started putting pieces together after everything had happened. So we had dinner at my house. I had cooked for, a whole day and a half. And so my son asked me, Mom, can you come pick me up from work? I went to pick him up and I thought he was going to drop him off at home. And he said, no, I'm going back. I'm going to go home with you. So I dropped him at his girlfriend's house. He got his clothes. He came back to my house because the plan was she was in Charlotte with her family, and then she was going to come be with us. And then we were all going to go to his dad's family, which is in Hendersonville, which is 4 or 5 minutes away from that Orchard bar. And then we were going to go to my mom's house, which is about 30 minutes away from there. So his siblings were in here. They're drinking. They're having a good time. They're the kids all over the place. He started playing all this gospel music, wanting to take all these pictures. And then, honest to God, just because I'm so in tune with my kids, I really felt that. I don't know what that energy was telling me, but I really felt that. And so it went by my head just a couple times, like, why are you listening to this music? I'm trying to dance and do my thing in here and finish these banana puddings. And he's like, Mama, I never would have made it if it wasn't for Jesus. So he was playing Marvin Sapp. And so, again, my son wasn't a church going person. I mean, I know he believed in God because I took him to church, but I never seen that side of him really. And so he was in here just in a good spirit, laughing and joking, which is always him. And I got dressed. I started to get dressed, and he kept saying, Mama, come take a picture. And I was like, I ain't taking no pictures. I'm sweaty. I've been in his kitchen. I'm gonna get right. And then you can take pictures. Well, he grabbed me and was like, man, just told his sister, man, just take this picture. We ain't got time to wait on her. And so it was the picture that you see me kind of doing that and leaning over him. It was the last picture that I got to take with him. And, so I went and got in the shower. I come out. Everybody's loading up kids. We're loading up cars. We're getting ready to leave. He was on my bed sleep, and I woke him up. And for a second, something said, "Don't wake him up." Something told me not to wake him up. But I thought if he wakes up and we're all gone an hour away, he's gonna be mad. So I woke him up. We loaded up. Everybody loaded into the cars. We got outside, and I don't know who it was, but somebody was like, "Where's dude at?" I called him dude, and they was like, "Where is he at?" And I said, "He's in the car." And they was like, "No, he's not in the car." So I came back upstairs, and he had went back into my baby's room and went back to sleep. So I kept on till I woke him up, and then we finally left. And so we ended at his grandmama's house, his great grandmama's house. His dad was there, his aunt, his dad's sister, his aunts, and all the great aunts, and all of them were there. And we hung out until I got kind of tired. And his sister had just had a baby a month prior to that, so she was not. She was ready to go to bed, take the baby in. So we were gonna come back to Buncombe County and go have a drink. But when she said she didn't feel good, I was like, let's just go ahead and go home. So when I made it home, Elijah called me and he was like, Ma, you at home? And I said, yeah. And he says, are you going to go out? And I said, yeah, I probably will. And he said, well, listen, I don't want you to go out by yourself. I'm not going to be able to protect you. I want you to go get my gun. And I was like, I am not going to get no gun. I had never shot a gun. I've never really held a gun. And I was just like, I ain't going to get no gun. But I know my son, and he really was just being funny. But he was just like, I ain't gonna be, he was drunk. So he was like, I'm not gonna be able to protect you. So I'm gonna need you to be able to protect yourself, because I had been jumped by these little girls one time, and actually 2 months prior to this. So he was just like, I don't want you to be out there by yourself. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna chill. I'm gonna stay home. Um, and that's pretty much what I did. I got my bath. I got in the bed. And I woke up with my phone ringing, um, basically in my hand. And I seen that it was my daughter's number first. And so I'm thinking she's probably calling me, because when I see the time, it's like 2:30. So I'm like, she's probably calling me um to see if I made it back in, because she thought I went out. And then I see Shay's number, and I knew my daughter had went home, and I knew Shay was with my son. So then I just start to panic, because it went all over my body. So I answered the phone, and my daughter was like, Mom, please hurry up, get your clothes on. Come on, let's go. Get up and get your clothes on. So my heart is like doing this weird, can't catch up with what's going on type feeling. And so then I see Shay's number, and I just throw the phone down and just start screaming. I don't know what it was, but I just panicked, and so when I answered her, she's screaming, Trish, please get here, please get here. Um, they shot him. He shot him. And I was like, who? And she was like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. He shot him. And I said, where? And she was like, I don't know. And I said, well, who's there? And she was like, I don't know. I said, well, is the ambulance there? Is the ambulance there? She was like, no. I said, is the police there? She said, yeah. And I said, is his daddy there yet? And she was like, I don't know. And so I said, okay, so I'm walking around the house and I can't even think, but I had on a pair of pajamas that just really didn't have no elastic in them. And it was just like a throw over, like a little pullover shirt. And I didn't have any underclothes, bra and underwear, on up under it. But I just threw my shoes on and I ran out the door. I jumped in my car, and what would have been, I guess, a 30, 40-minute drive was a 13-minute drive for me, because I'm on the phone and I'm hearing all this stuff, and I'm hearing all these people, and people keep calling, and they're calling from apps, and they're just, all these calls are coming in, and I'm just trying to stay on the phone because I know she's right there with him. And she was just like, please, please, please. He's still got a pulse. He's still breathing. He's still got a pulse. He's still breathing. And so as I'm getting off the exit, which is probably 4 or 5 lights from where they actually were. And so 2 lights are like back to back together, right there together. So I got to the first light, and it was red. And I just remember it being red and his daddy's number popping up on my phone. And I was like, I don't want to talk to him. I want to keep her on the phone. And when I swiped it, it answered it. And he goes, Trish, they just threw a sheet over our kid. And I was like, what the F are you talking about? Like, no, I mean, I'm on the phone right now. She said he's breathing, like, right now. And he was like, I don't know. And so I just threw the phone in the floor, and I kept going. And so probably a minute and a half, maybe not even that long. I mean, I got there, and then I swung up in the back of the parking lot. Like, you could have went on the strip, because it's like a strip mall, but I went to the side and came up around the side of it. And drove into the parking lot so that I can go into the open part of the parking lot. And so when I got to the open part of the parking lot, I seen the sheet. And as I got closer to the sheet, I seen his hand hanging out the sheet. And then his head was half covered, but his hand was hanging out. So my thinking was, he had to do that because it was chaotic. It was just all over the place, people all over the place. Nobody was being detained. They were arguing with the police. The police was fighting or slamming somebody on the ground. And I don't know how to make sense of any of it. I just want to get to my child. So I jump out my truck and I gun for it. Like, I just run for him. And right before I could just literally touch him, I was just surrounded by all these bodies. And I was just like, I got to check my child. Just move. Let me check my child. I just need to see he's okay. And I don't remember what they were saying. I don't remember what was being said. I just knew that I was just still trying to push, like try to get through them. Like I gotta get to him. And before I knew it, I was slammed on the ground so hard, my chest hit the ground, but it knocked the wind out of me. But then I just kind of put me in this mindset that I didn't even really know what was going on. Like it was just so much that I didn't even recognize what had just happened. I mean, I knew I'm on the ground and it's cold because it was November and it's cold. And I just feel all these knees and elbows and my arms are being ripped behind me and yanked and twisted. My hands are being twisted and my arms are being twisted. And I'm screaming like, oh my God, like what are y'all doing? Like, why are y'all doing this? Like, that's my child. Like, this is my child. And then I'm hearing my daughter like, that's my mama. Oh my God. I'm hearing the bystanders like, that's his mama. That's his mama. And then I just hear my daughter, one of my daughters just screaming. Like she just was screaming. And so I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. And I'm just seeing his hand in between these knees that got me on the ground. Like my chin is on the ground, but I'm seeing straight through and I still see this hand. And all I'm thinking about is just let me touch it. Just let me touch it. You know, just let me see. Just let me see if he's, still breathing. And before I know it, I just go black. Like I can't breathe. Well, before I go black, I'm screaming I can't breathe because all the pressure on my back was pushing my torso to a flat surface that wasn't breathing. So, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't moving. So I'm just like, oh my God, I can't breathe. And then I'm just visualizing like, I'm about to die. Like, this is really going to take, like, this is crazy. This is really what's going to happen. Like, so I started feeling faint again. So I was asking them to give me some water. I asked them who was the officer and why was I there and what, I didn't understand this procedure. So they was like, we don't know what the reason is for you being here. And so we can't do anything about it. The arresting officer has to be the one that comes in and give you your charges. So I'm like, well, if he's call him back here and make him come, we can't get in contact with him. I mean, they was just antagonizing the hell out of me. Um, and so I asked one of the cops to give me some water and he was doing something. And so he came back. I said, can you please give me some water? I feel like I'm about to pass out. I had been screaming and chanting and begging and pleading, like, please just let me go see about my child. Just begging him, telling him, like, do you have a mama? Do you have a child? Like, why would you do this to me? I'm just saying anything I could say till all 6 or 7 of them left and it was just two. And they were sitting behind a screen, like laughing and doing little stuff. So this third one, I asked him for the water and so he finally walked to the sink to get it. But the cop that was sitting at the desk handed him the cup of water. I didn't pay any attention. When he gave it to me, I got ready to I put it up to my mouth and then something told me to look in it. When I looked in it, it was something floating on the top of the water. So I was just like, I know this is some crazy. I know this ain't what I think it is. Like I couldn't even believe it. So I sat the cup down and I asked him again. I said, could you give me a cup of water? And he looked like got one, but he was like, okay. So he walked back over to the sink, got it himself and brung it back to me. When he brung it back to me, I handed him the other cup. I said, what is that? And he says, I don't know. What are you talking about? And he looked in the cup. He was like, ooh, what is that? I said, he spit in the cup. And he was like, no, nobody would do that. I said, this is what y'all doing. So, he ended up, here comes the cop. He's real nasty and arrogant, look like he's about 22 years old, hot. And he's smirking and walking up to me. Well, I've got to read you all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. I said, you don't need to say nothing to me. Like you intentionally pull me away from my children. I don't have nothing to say to you. Get out my face and stay away from me. And so, he was like, well, you'll just be here if I can't read. I said, get somebody else to do it. Cause you don't have to talk to me after the way you treated me, after how you crammed and punched and did me in that car. Like you don't get to talk to me. So, the one that gave me the water actually came back probably 30 minutes later, like, let me just read you this and take you to the magistrate's window. I guess he might have been the one that was like, let's get this woman out of here. So he got me to the window. The magistrate was like, I'm not going to arrest you. I'm not going to, give you a bond because you've already been through enough. But I'm telling you now, don't go back up there. Your son's body's been moved. and make sure you come to this court date. So I'm getting ready to go out the door. This guy just starts apologizing. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm like, what y'all did, how y'all treated me was just wrong. I appreciate you because you was the lesser of the evil, so to speak, but y'all just wrong. So I go out the door. I'm just feeling so depleted, And so I get in the car, I go home, and for 2 days I couldn't speak. Like I couldn't talk. I was just in some kind of crazy state that I couldn't even speak. So then I get that phone call to come down there. So that's the part I was telling you. Once I got down there, he showed me the video of what happened, told me he was going to call the DA. So 3 weeks after my son was killed is when his funeral was. So the first week, the coroners had him. The second week, the funeral home had him, but I wasn't in no condition to process getting the funeral together. So I made it for the following week. At the time, I didn't realize it was my mama's birthday. My brother's birthday on the 9th was his actual funeral, and then the 12th was the day they actually asked me to come in to talk to them and basically demand it, because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel at this funeral, so I'll call you. And he was like, no, I need you to come Tuesday. But it's because they had already put it out to the news that they were not going to file charges. So when I got there, I'm sitting there with the district attorney, the detective, and the captain of the police, and they're sitting in an L shape. The detective, the detective, the DA, and the captain of the police are sitting in a row. Me and my daughter sitting side by side. She's at my right, and she's got her baby. And he just started mumbling, putting his head down. I had been calling him and asking him all during this time, like, what's going on? Why haven't he been arrested? You told me he was going to be arrested. Well, there's other things that came up on the video. So we got some specialists looking at it, and we'll get back in contact with you. That was the first excuse. The second excuse was that they couldn't find him. I wandered around until my daughter ended up running into him. I, called them for that. That's when he told me. He was like, we just told his mom. That's the reason why she's out there in this parking lot crying, because my daughter's seen her crying and called me like, Mama, this guy's mama's in this parking lot crying. And I said, don't say nothing to her. I'm going to come down and help you with your car. And I got down there and I noticed that he was in the back seat of an SUV, with his hands across the back of the seat. So I started calling the police, calling the detective, like, I see him, come get him. And he was like, yeah, the reason why his mama's crying is because we just made contact with her and we told her that she needs to bring him in to be questioned about this murder. And I said, you sound crazy as hell. I mean, it just hit me all kinds of ways. I said, he is 30 years old. He don't need his mama to bring him. Y'all come and get him. Like now, come and get him. Well, Miss King, there's some things that came out. We're going to talk to you about it. And I just knew then that I didn't think it was going to be this, but I don't know. So the 12th comes, I go, we sitting down. He puts his head down and he's mumbling and talking and stuff. And I said, what is wrong? And he was like, well, we're not going to be able to file charges at this time. And I said, what are you talking about? And he was like, we're not going to be able to file charges at this time because when I showed you that circle of people, and he was like, I realized that there was a muzzle flash that I didn't recognize when I showed you the video. And I said, that don't even make damn sense. I said, you pointed out because it was dark. So how did you see a muzzle flash? I said, that could have been people's phones. That could have been a car going by. It could have been anything. I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but I know what I seen. So what are you talking about? So he goes, well, Miss King, the more and more we looked at it, we had 50 people look at the video, hours and hours of going through this stuff. I said, wouldn't no 50 people need to look at this? No, hours and hours would it need. If one person seen what you showed me, his ass could have been in jail. And so he says, well, no, that's not actually what happened. And the reason why I didn't show, I said, well, why you didn't point out to me my son looked like he was shooting that day? He's like, well, because I just wanted to protect you. I didn't want to upset you any more than you already were. And so I hid that part from you. You'll hear that on one of the videos. He's saying to me, I didn't tell you that part because I didn't want to upset you. But you showed me this boy walking up and killing my child. It didn't make sense. And so I jump up and was like, just give me your cards. Let me get out of here, because I just didn't know what my brain was going to say to do. So I was like, let me get away from y'all. And so the captain walked away and got the cards, and the DA and the attorney. So I was like, what are you doing? What are you saying? And he was like, Miss King, I'm just so sorry. I presented the evidence, and it's the district attorney's, deal. And, he's choosing not to charge. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's choosing not to charge. You see a murder like that, you have to charge. And he goes, I'm the one, not the DA says, I'm not the one that's charging. I've chosen not to charge, and I'm not going to charge till somebody in that parking lot comes and tells me what happened. I said, you don't need nobody to tell you. You got a video of what happened. Like, he was like, well, until one of those people come out that parking lot telling me what happened, I'm not going to do anything about it. And all y'all going to do anyways is go get your brothers, your cousins, your friends, and his ass will be dead in a week.
Wow.
I mean, I just I just thought I was in a twilight zone. Like, this was not a real life. It just wasn't a real life thing, you know? And this man standing in front of me, looking me square in the face with this arrogant face and waiting on me to respond to that. I mean, it was just like being kicked in the face while you had me on the ground with my hands behind my back with my ass out. Like, it just felt like I was being spit on. And I couldn't make any sense out of what was happening. And so I gotta go. Like, I gotta get away from y'all. So I go start heading out the door. And when he said that to me, actually, he started yelling and saying, "Put them damn phones down. Y'all gangs this, gangs that." I mean, just ranting over something. I don't even know what the hell he was talking about. Because I was like, my son is not in a gang. He's never been affiliated with a gang. He's never been charged to be in a gang. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And so we're having this kind of it wasn't an argument, but I was just saying what I was saying. And so when I walked off, my daughter was already out the little first part of the doorway. So she's out at the door to go out the building. So I follow behind her, and he stops me. He grabs me by the arm, like gently, but touches my arm, and he goes, "Miss King, I'm so sorry. I did everything I could. I gave all the evidence. It's not my call. It's DA's call." I said, what are you talking about? I said, how could he not charge this boy after you watch him kill him the way that he did? And it was premeditated, because when he was out there fighting him, he didn't have a gun in his hand. He had a hoodie on and a hat on. So he didn't have that gun. And so he was like, well, when your son shot, I said, if my son would have shot in that crowd of people, why didn't they scatter when my son pulled the gun first? Why did people take off running and haul ass then? Because none of those people was his friends. I said, but you seen how that boy walked up there behind that crowd of people and shot, and then everybody took off running. And he said, well, ma'am, I promise to God, I did everything I could. I just want you to believe me. I said, let me tell you something. I said, I'm not Miss Betty them. I'm not. And you're not going to be able to get away. You're not going to get away with this. Like, I don't know what's going to have to happen, but I promise you on everything I love, if it's the last thing I do, you will pay for what you're doing. I said, you got right now to fix it. You got right now to go arrest this boy and that girl and that guy. I said, you have right now to do that. I said, because if you let me walk out this damn building and you don't charge these people, and there ain't nothing going on the news about all this stuff, I said, I'm going to raise all kind of hell. Well, I just hope you let everybody know I'm doing the best I can. It wasn't me. It wasn't. It's what he kept saying. It wasn't me. And I'm like, you sound crazy as hell. I mean, how does it sound to say that? When you know it? I said, so if you feel like you can't do nothing about it and you know it's wrong, it's a chain of command. Go over his damn head. So, and that's just been it. So I petitioned the court. I got the court order to see the body dash cam. The judge that was gonna be there ended up not being there, because they was telling me, don't expect to be able to see these videos. They're not gonna let you see them. This judge is gonna go along with them. They're not gonna let you see it. So by the grace of God, this judge, I don't know if he got sick, I don't know what happened to him, but he wasn't there. This judge, when I was in there, I told him, I said, he said, I'm gonna let y'all, he said, whatever videos y'all gonna let her see them. And he wasn't playing. He was like, and I don't want you to be giving her no cropped up stuff. I want you to mash play and let it make sense. Like, don't give her no block, crop stuff. And so I said, well, sir, I just want to say this while we're in front of everybody, while I'm in front of the DA, while I'm in front of the detective, while I'm in front of their attorney, while I'm in front of a judge. I said, I want to be able to let you know what I've seen already. So if they're not going to show me this video, or they show me something other than what I'm telling you, something is not right, and they have done something to it. They've altered this evidence. And so he let me tell him everything I told you. He stood there. It's on record that I said everything, what I seen, how I seen it, in a courtroom in front of a judge. And so they had 4 or 5 days, 7 days to get it together. when I got out the courtroom, they bum rushed me. Oh, Miss King, what day are you available? We're ready to show you this. We're going to show you this. And um, made some statement that you've never seen this video. I was like, I've already seen the video. No, you've never seen this video. And I thought he was lying, but he was telling the truth that I hadn't, out of the one time he did, I really hadn't seen this video. So when he brought me in the room to see that video, there's a big old 80-inch TV, probably bigger than that in there. And it had these blocks going down the side. As soon as I seen that, I knew that this was not going to be mash it, play it, and let it run. So I'm bracing myself because I'm telling this detective, I said, where's that video you showed me? He's sitting with his hands crossed, hands buckled, and with his head down. And I said, lift your head up and tell me where that video is. And he was like, what are you talking about? I said, the video you showed me in that room. I don't know what you're talking about. I said, oh, okay. All right. So then he says, well, I'm about to show you what started all this, how this all started. So that's when he showed me how the club scene was, where everybody was, where the three of them was sitting in a corner. My son was, just dancing in the floor, and how the boy walked past my son and stood, and my son turned around and walked off, not knowing he was standing there for him. He just walked off because the other boy bumped him. So he walks off, and then that's how all that came into play. When they got him outside, they jumped him, and he walked away. He got the gun, and he walked up, and Keon sat in that car running, waiting on him to do it. As soon as he got in the car, he pulled that car off. And so I braced myself, and he mashed play. When he mashed play, he showed me all that, and then he said, now here's the part where your son, we see the muzzle flash. But it didn't make sense what he was saying, because this was just like, have you ever seen those AI videos? And this is so crazy. This is just how God works. Like, right when they showed me this video, I was trying to describe to my family the movements of my son that just wasn't a natural movement. I couldn't describe it because I had never seen it, and I didn't play video games or those games where the football players can run and they look real. I didn't see that. I didn't know what that was. And so when I seen it, I'm trying to describe it to my family, but it didn't make sense. But 2 weeks after they showed me this video, that's the first time I had ever seen an AI video where they got the picture and the person they can make the person do the dance, that dance. And so I was like, oh my God, this is how they did that. You know what I'm saying? But he showed my son popping around like with one arm extended, and then this big old bang. And if you ever, I don't know how old people are, but back when Batman first came out, they used to be bang, pow. There used to be this zigzag big circle, and then it has the bang or pow on the inside of it. And that's what was hanging off this gun. It just looked like somebody sat a big bang off of it. I'm like, this don't match no way, shape, or form. And you're not even in the same part of the damn parking lot. Like where he killed my son at this time, if you watch the video, you see me on the ground, that's not the same place. And so I didn't say that to him. I'm just like, I said, you know what? Whoever you paid to do this, y'all better get y'all money back. I said, because that is not my damn son. And he's like, Miss King, it is your son. I said, it is not my son. I said, I don't know how you did that. I said, but it's really whack and weak as hell. I said, because he don't even have a natural movement. You just see this arm appear. You don't see him raise his arm. So you see them kind of jogging next to each other. They're jogging next to each other, and then the gun comes out, and the pang comes out, and then the boy turns around and shoots, and then my son kind of does this whirly whirl and fall on the ground, and then he runs past another car and shoots in the air. And I was like, that don't even make no damn sense. Like the whole scenario just didn't even make sense. I said, y'all couldn't do no better than that. I'm telling you right now, you're going to jail, all of y'all. So I just started saying that. I'm saying all of y'all going to jail. Every one of y'all. I said, y'all obstructing justice, altering evidence. I said, you just fucking it all up. I said, but y'all going to jail. So I said, you know what? When I sat down in your office picking up my son's property, I just now realized why you're doing this. When you walk into this police department, it's a brand new police department. They built it and slapped it right inside of a black development and knocked down a couple of houses to do it. $11.5 million high-tech, up-to-date police department. They slapped it right there on the corner of the street. It was a minute and 14 seconds from that jail, from that police department to where my son got shot. And nobody showed up in enough time. I said that when you walk up there's a plaque that's dedicated to this officer. When you go inside the building, you see his billy club, his hat, in his case and all this stuff. And then when you walk to where they was taking us through that room, you see a mural on the wall that has him and his wife and his family and his life. And then in the middle wall, it shows the story of what happened to him. And then over the right side of the wall is his badge with a black, painted his numbers over. So I'm sitting in there and I'm just like, why does this make even any sense to me? One, because it was November 24th, 1981. It was the exact same day my son had died. I don't know how this even is. It's just outrageous that it's a coincidence or anything like that. But it was just crazy because I said that was why my hair stood up. That was just why when I seen it, I was just like, what the hell? So it made me read it. And when I started reading it, I noticed that it said something about a man from Brevard, and I knew I was born in Brevard. So I was like, what is this? And so I screenshotted it and I called my mom and I was like, Mom, what is this? And she was just like, you need to call your daddy. So I called my dad and I was like, what is this? And he was like, that guy. So I read it to him and he was pissed. He was like, what the hell? He was like, that is not what happened. Yada, yada. I'm like, what happened? He was like, that's my brother. And I knew that I had an uncle that died in prison and that he was accused of murder, but I don't know why I thought it was a woman. But it wasn't. It was a cop. And so, when you're 8, 9, 10 years old and you hear that type of stuff, you hear bits and pieces. So that's why I remembered it the way that I did, is because we wasn't allowed to be in the room when they was discussing this stuff. But it was my daddy's brother who was accused of killing this cop. So I really feel like in my heart, there's no other reason that makes sense. One, y'all know that this was premeditated. You watch it on camera, and then you didn't do any type of evidence to substantiate your call of justifiable homicide. One, you didn't do any kind of ballistics testing on the gun that you claimed that was my son's. You didn't do any gunpowder residue on him. His hand was laying out there on the ground. His other hand was laying on his chest. So you didn't cover his hands. You didn't do any kind of ballistic testing. You could hear the chief medical examiner saying, no, nobody did those tests. Why you didn't do those tests? Because they would have came back negative, and then you would have been proven this was not justifiable homicide. And so when I say all this to him, he slams his hand down on the desk. He's like, Miss King, you'll just put any damn thing in a bag and shake it up and throw it out. He was like, I hope you don't believe the stuff that's coming out your mouth. I said, I know exactly why you did what you did. And I said, and that's exactly why I said, y'all, this whole system, I said, y'all had one. And this is what I said to him. I said, normally y'all just be so glad to lock up a black person. I said, you'd be so glad to do it. This was a win for you. You didn't have to do no case, nothing. You would have just had charged them all, and that would have been that. I said, but you played with me, and one time when you could have got the end that you wanted, you didn't, and you tried to do all this. I said, you could have saved all of y'all this. I said, but now I'm gonna make sure that everybody knows what y'all have done, because it's just not right. It doesn't make sense. The 911 call was 10 minutes before my son was shot. And this cop, the one that was in there cussing me out, sat across the street, literally in his cruiser. Because why? This is a black club. This is a holiday. We know they're going to get down there, get drunk, and act a fool. So we're going to sit close enough to where we can get them. You know what I mean? But you don't even come across there when the 911 call say, hey, they fighting in the parking lot. If he would have drove that car through that parking lot, we might not be sitting here. You know what I mean? Because that would have stopped it right then and there. When my son was coming out that club, none of the bouncers stopped it. Nobody tried to help him. When he was shot, the state trooper, the one that was cussing me out inside the jail, instead of him administering CPR to my son, which is what he should have rendered all kind of help to him immediately when he seen him in that condition, and not just counted him dead, removed a gun and secured a gun instead. Which, yeah, that might be a part of what he had to do. But why didn't y'all immediately start administering some kind of help for my child, so at least he could have died in dignity, off on a stretcher inside of the van at the hospital 2 or 3 days later? I don't know. But I just know that was not okay. I know that my son could hear me screaming and being slammed on the ground in the midst of all that. I couldn't get to him. He couldn't get to me. Like the damage that they have done. And I know that I'm able to talk about it, but I've done it. I've said it so many times and so often and so many times in a day. And so I'm just desensitized. If there's a way to be that, but to make any sense out of all of this is just so unreal that I must have some kind of mental state that I'm disassociating. to try to protect myself, because if I really think about this, I would literally go crazy. Like I would literally go crazy. But I also
Mm.
know that I'm having to fight, like I have to put this out there so people can hear what happened. And I think that it's crazy that I would had to have died too, that I had to be shot in the face for somebody to hear this.
And Patricia, thanks for sharing. And for our last question, um, is there anything you want to add or tell people before we conclude the interview?
I just feel like anytime that anything like this happens, people really need to stand up and stand together. These things keep happening because people feel weak. They don't know how to apply their strength and their pressure, and they don't know how to stand together when this type of stuff happens or happening. It didn't happen. I'm not the first person that this happened to. Clearly, it just is. It's just the trend that cops get in these positions and they feel like they are above the law, and that just because they're just judgmental and biased and ignorant, that they feel like just these unrighteous members in this system, that is a group of people who feed off of other people's mishap and poor choices and mistreat them further instead of getting them the help. Is public service is supposed to be public service, public help, not condemning and disrespectful and killing people. Like I just feel like people really need to know, like, if you stand up for when this happens and make the noise that's necessary, then it's not going to stop it, because people are still going to feel like they can do it, but it's going to make people really think twice, because they're going to know you may not be the one that's going to get away with it this time.